Hey there, curious minds. Welcome back to Medieval Historian, or welcome for the first time. Tonight's video is not about fairy tales. It's about fear. About what happened when your stomach started to swell, the whispers began, and the church raised an eyebrow. This is a story of pregnancy. Not now, with ultrasounds and epidurals, but back in the Middle Ages when childbirth was deadly, and what came after could be even worse. Today, if you find out you're pregnant, you might book a doctor's appointment, order a body pillow, or start knitting baby socks. But in the Middle Ages, you'd start praying. Not out of joy, but terror. No hospitals, no hygiene, and no guarantee you or the baby would make it out alive. Childbirth was a battlefield, and your own body was the front line. So, before we begin, and before you get too comfortable, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next descent into the past. And tell me in the comments, what city and country are you watching from, and what time is it right now where you are? I'm just a nerd who loves digging into history's darkest corners, and it always blows my mind to see people tuning in from all over the world. Let's get into it. What happened if you got pregnant in the Middle Ages? You don't feel well. Your body's off. Your appetite has vanished. Your stomach churns at the smell of boiled cabbage, and your chest feels sore in a way that no tight corset can explain. There's no thermometer, no calendar app, no test stick to pee on, and no cute digital screen that says pregnant. In the Middle Ages, you don't know you're pregnant. You suspect. Maybe you've missed your monthly bleeding. But that could also mean illness, stress, or malnutrition. You're constantly exhausted, but so is everyone else in your village. You're nauseated, but the stew smelled like feet anyway. Every symptom can be blamed on life itself. The concept of early pregnancy symptoms doesn't exist. You're either with child or you're not, and nobody can say for sure until your belly starts to swell or a midwife presses a wrinkled hand to your abdomen and hums thoughtfully. Still, there were methods, if you can call them that. One folk test involved mixing wine with urine, because the idea was that if you're pregnant, the chemical reaction would change the color. If it didn't, just drink the wine and forget your problems. Another charming medieval trick was to place a clove of garlic in your vagina overnight. If your breath smelled like garlic the next morning, congratulations, you're open inside and possibly fertile. Yes, people actually believed that. The human body was a mystery, and pregnancy was interpreted through equal parts superstition, astrology, and sheer guesswork. Doctors, if you were rich enough to see one, might talk about the humors being unbalanced or the womb wandering. Yes, wandering womb syndrome was a legitimate diagnosis. Apparently, your uterus could float around your body like a confused balloon, causing hysteria and unexplained symptoms. Being female was basically a pre-existing condition. So, when you finally realize you haven't bled for 2 months, your back aches, and your stomach turns at the smell of goat stew, there's a sinking certainty. You're not sick, you're pregnant. And now, your real problems begin. You don't get a pamphlet or a doctor's visit, you get fear, because this isn't the start of something beautiful. It's the beginning of a gamble where the stakes are your life, your reputation, and your soul. Whether you're married or not, rich or poor, noble or nameless, your body just signed a contract with fate. No refunds, no disclaimers, and no escape. You don't celebrate, you brace yourself. Because in the Middle Ages, pregnancy wasn't a private joy. It was a public crisis in slow motion. You don't remember the exact moment it hits you. Not intellectually, but in your bones. The way your hands shake when you kneel in prayer. The chill that won't leave your skin even when you sit by the fire. The terrifying certainty that something has changed inside you. Maybe it was the missed cycle. Maybe it was the midwife's sideways glance. Maybe it was your mother's silence when she caught you retching in the morning. But now, you know. Not as a thought, but as a doom hanging above your head. And it doesn't matter whether you're 16 or 30, married or not, ready or absolutely not. Because in this world, your readiness means nothing. You are now with child, and everything about your life is about to change, permanently. There's no announcement, no joy-filled dinner or social media post with tiny shoes on the table. There's only weight, the weight of your body, and the heavier weight of expectation. If you're lucky and married, your husband might nod, maybe even mutter something close to a smile. More often, he says nothing, because pregnancy is a woman's duty, not a reason for celebration. If you're a noblewoman, servants will be instructed to watch you more closely. A priest might be consulted, not to bless the pregnancy, but to ensure your soul stays clean for the child within. Because medieval belief wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. They believed that a mother's sins could poison the unborn. Gossip, impure thoughts, even dreaming about the wrong man could supposedly mark the baby. So, watch your mind. God is listening. But if you're unmarried, then God help you, because no one else will. The whispers start immediately. People stop making eye contact. A neighbor might mutter the word whore under her breath, loud enough for you to hear. Your family might hide you or send you away. You might be forced into a hasty marriage, or thrown into the church to scrub floors in eternal penance. In some villages, you could be publicly shamed, ducked in freezing rivers, or locked in stocks for the crime of conception. The man, he usually disappears. His honor somehow remains intact. Yours, gone. And yet, in this chaos, you're still expected to carry the child. You will still labor. You will still bleed. You will still face death for the sake of a life no one helped you create. In the Middle Ages, the moment you knew you were pregnant wasn't marked by joy. It was marked by silence, fear, and a new awareness. That your body was no longer yours. It belonged to the child, to the church, to your husband, to the village's judgment, but not to you. So you sit in the dim corner of a smoky hut, hands on your stomach, listening to the quiet grow louder, and you wonder, will I survive this? The first trimester doesn't feel like a beginning. It feels like being poisoned very slowly. Your stomach is in revolt. Your appetite has disappeared, but somehow you're still expected to cook for everyone else. The smell of salted pork makes you gag. Stew sends you running. Bread crusts taste like ashes. There's no ginger tea or saltine crackers, just a vague hope that whatever's fermenting in your gut won't make a sudden reappearance during morning mass. And yes, they call it morning sickness now, but in the Middle Ages, it was called weakness, or imbalance, or punishment for sin, or sometimes just being difficult. You're tired, so tired your bones hum with it. But resting isn't an option. You still have to fetch water, tend fires, scrub laundry, muck stalls, and maybe survive another frostbitten morning without collapsing. And when you do rest, you're met with suspicion. Lazy, they call you. Slothful, ungrateful. Pregnancy is supposed to be a woman's purpose, not her excuse. Nobody tells you this is normal. Nobody comforts you. You're expected to endure it with silence and piety, and just the right amount of visible suffering to prove you're not making it up. Your body aches in places that don't even have names. Your breasts swell painfully under a rough wool tunic. Your joints crack like old furniture. You're sweating one moment and shivering the next. In a world where medical knowledge is more rumor than science, no one can explain what's happening inside you. So they turn to God. Or worse, the stars. Maybe you're a Virgo with a bad moon. Maybe your baby will be a monster because of a dream you had about goats. No one knows, but everyone has opinions. And then come the fears. Miscarriage isn't just a tragedy, it's a potential accusation. If you lose the baby, some may whisper that you wanted it gone, that you performed dark rituals, that you squeezed too hard while picking turnips. There's no ultrasound to confirm a heartbeat, no checkup to assure you everything's fine. You just wait in fear, in pain, in isolation. Every cramp is a warning. Every spot of blood is a sentence. And through it all, you have to pretend you're fine, that you're blessed, that this miserable descent into nausea and dread is actually a gift. Because in the Middle Ages, the first trimester wasn't a countdown to joy. It was a test of how much quiet terror a woman could swallow while smiling through gritted teeth. Now you know, but do you tell? Because that's the real gamble. Sharing the news might bring help, or it might bring judgment, scorn, punishment. There's no right answer, only consequences. If you're married, your husband's reaction depends entirely on whether he thinks the child is his, and trust is a luxury rarely afforded to women. He might accuse, he might question, he might drink until he forgets, or worse, he might remember. But if you're unmarried, things get darker. Confessing the truth means opening yourself up to a storm of shame that hits harder than any winter wind. You may be dragged in front of the local priest. You may be made to kneel and confess your fornication in front of your entire parish. Your parents might weep, or scream, or throw you out. Your village might pretend you never existed. No baby bump. No scandal. Just silence. If you hide the pregnancy, you live in fear. Fear of discovery. Fear of betrayal. Fear of your own changing body giving you away. Every garment becomes a prison. Every sideways glance a threat. Every neighbor's whisper could be about you. And yet, some women do tell. Quietly. To a sister, a midwife, a friend. Someone who can help. Because in the Middle Ages, information was survival. You needed to know what herbs to avoid, what foods might quicken the baby, what charms to hang by your bed. You needed someone to tell you what to expect when you're expecting a medieval hemorrhage. But choosing the wrong confidant could mean the difference between sympathy and excommunication. Midwives were the unsung heroes, guardians of ancient secret knowledge. But even they could be accused of sorcery if something went wrong. And if you name the father, that's another minefield. If he's wealthy or noble, you might be accused of trying to trap him. If he's poor, he might vanish into the next county. So you stay quiet, or you whisper, or you lie. Because telling the truth in this world isn't freeing, it's fatal. You don't announce your pregnancy, you survive it. Word by word. Choice by choice, breath by trembling breath. Being pregnant in the Middle Ages was never easy. But being pregnant and unmarried, that wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. The moment people found out, your life shifted into a shadow world, full of judgment and limited choices, none of them good. Morality was policed with the ferocity of a holy war, and female purity wasn't just expected, it was the cornerstone of your family's honor. And now, you'd shattered it. Whether the pregnancy came from a moment of passion, coercion, or something far darker didn't matter. Your body now told a story that the church, your neighbors, and even your own blood couldn't ignore. If you were lucky, and that word must be used loosely, your family might hide you, ship you off to a distant relative, tuck you into a convent to scrub floors in silent repentance, or worse, force you into a quick marriage with whoever could be bribed or blackmailed into it. But often, the response was much colder. Disownment, isolation, shame. You might find yourself sleeping in barns, eating scraps, your body swelling with proof of your disgrace while villagers mutter and spit. For noble families, The scandal could ruin alliances, inheritance claims, and public status. For peasants, it might simply mean starvation. Either way, you became untouchable. Some towns had specific punishments for fallen women: public whippings, shaving your head, parading you in rags through the market. In more severe cases, you could be locked in stocks, ducked in icy rivers, or imprisoned, all for carrying life inside you. You became the object of religious lectures, cautionary tales, and cruel entertainment. You were no longer a daughter or sister. You were a warning. And the child you carried? Bastard, illegitimate, born into sin and burdened with that label for life. Even worse, some women, desperate, terrified, alone, tried to hide their pregnancies until the very end, wearing loose clothing, pretending the swelling was illness, giving birth in secret. And if the baby didn't survive, whether by tragedy or panicked mistake, that could mean a murder charge. Infanticide was treated as both crime and proof of demonic influence. Women were hanged, drowned, or buried alive with the corpses of their newborns. Their deaths made into examples. And what of the fathers? Most walked away. Some denied everything. A few might claim the child under pressure, but the stain of shame never landed on them like it did on you. The Middle Ages were not interested in fairness. They were interested in control. And for a woman, pregnancy without a ring was a fast track to ruin, no matter how it happened. So, if you were unwed, you didn't just fear the pain of childbirth. You feared the crowd, the sermon, the punishment. Because in this world, your body wasn't just carrying a baby. It was carrying a sentence. Who's the father? In today's world, that question might involve paternity tests and awkward text messages. In the Middle Ages, it could determine your entire fate, or end your life. Because naming the father of your child wasn't just gossip material. It was a landmine, a legal risk, a spiritual hazard. Say the wrong name, and you could end up flogged, exiled, or worse. If you were married, then the answer was simple, at least officially. The child belonged to your husband, whether or not biology agreed. It didn't matter if he'd been off fighting a war, hiding in a tavern, or conveniently absent for months. A man's word outweighed a woman's truth, and the law was built to preserve his pride. But if there were rumors about a servant boy, a traveling merchant, or heaven forbid, someone of higher rank, the whispers could outpace your denials. Adultery was considered both a moral failing and a legal offense. For men, it meant a slap on the wrist. For women, banishment, beatings, or burial behind the church wall without a headstone. And if your husband had doubts, he could refuse the child, disown both of you, or accuse you publicly and demand penance or punishment. If you were unmarried, things got even more perilous. Identifying the father could go two ways. If he was willing to marry you, maybe the scandal would be contained. If he wasn't, you'd be accused of seduction, or lying, or witchcraft. Some men fled the village the moment the rumor started. Others denied everything and dared you to prove otherwise. And, of course, if he had power, a noble title, wealth, good luck, your accusation would be seen as manipulation, a desperate ploy to climb the ladder. Never mind that he promised you safety, or that he took it by force. Your words meant nothing. His denial meant everything. And the church didn't help. Priests might ask if you'd tempted him, if you'd worn your hair loose or laughed too loudly, if you'd brought this on yourself. After all, a man's lust was expected. A woman's desire was a sin. If your father was high-born, he might duel the man or pay him off. If your father was a peasant, he might beat you himself and curse the day you were born. But if you didn't name the father, you risked accusations of hiding a bastard, of covering for a sin, of endangering a child's soul by denying him his lineage. Either way, you were cornered. Because in the Middle Ages, the truth wasn't what mattered. What mattered was who believed you, and they rarely did. So when they asked, "Who's the father?" you answered carefully, quietly, sometimes not at all. Because in that moment, you weren't defending a name. You were defending your life. She doesn't come with a stethoscope or sterile gloves. She comes with calloused hands, a woven bag full of pungent herbs, and eyes that have seen more births and deaths than she'll ever speak of. The midwife arrives quietly, usually summoned in whispers by another woman in the village. She's not a doctor. There are barely any of those for women, but in the Middle Ages, she is the closest thing to hope. She's not just a birth assistant. She's part herbalist, part healer, part confessor, and part spiritual buffer between you and whatever lies waiting inside your womb. Midwives aren't chosen. They're forged. Most of them learned from older women, attending births from the time they were old enough to carry water. There's no diploma, no license, just experience, raw and bloody. She knows which herbs ease cramps, which prayers to chant during a breach, and how to hold your hand as you scream your throat raw. And if she's truly skilled, she can tell by touch alone whether your baby is alive, sideways, or already giving you trouble. But her presence is double-edged. In a world soaked in superstition, midwives walk a narrow, dangerous path. If the birth goes well, they're praised. If it goes wrong, if the mother bleeds too much, if the child is stillborn, they can be accused of witchcraft, or poison, or dark prayers whispered over moonlit bowls of bloodroot. One minute she's your savior, the next she's being dragged to the stocks for unnatural practices, all because she dared to know more about your body than the priest ever will. She doesn't care about your social status. She's helped noblewomen behind velvet drapes and peasants in mud huts. She's cut umbilical cords with a carving knife and delivered babies while kneeling in frozen straw. She's seen the worst. Babies born twisted, conjoined, silent. Mothers who hemorrhage like rivers. Fathers who pray too late. And yet she keeps coming. Because despite the fear, the risk, and the constant threat of being burned as a witch, she knows this. Without her, more of you would die. She offers you no guarantees, just knowledge, whispered through cracked lips. A poultice for your swelling, a charm for good fortune, a brew to settle your stomach, maybe even a warning if she sees something she can't fix. She won't tell you the full truth because sometimes the truth is too much, but she'll stay. She'll catch your baby, or your blood, or your last breath if it comes to that. In the Middle Ages, the midwife isn't a luxury. She's a necessity. She's the thread between life and death, pulled tight by hands that never stop shaking, only pretending to. At first, it's just a flutter, like wind moving under your skin. Then, a knock. Then, a jab that makes you gasp in the middle of milking a goat. And that's when you know, the baby's alive. You've crossed a strange, invisible line, called quickening. In the Middle Ages, this moment wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. It was proof that the soul had entered the body. Before this, you were just possibly pregnant. After this, your womb was officially occupied by a living soul, and that changed everything. The church declared this the moment the fetus became real. Miscarriages before quickening were considered unfortunate but not tragic. After quickening, they became suspect. They could be considered sin, or sabotage, or worse, murder. So when you feel that first kick, you don't just cry or smile, you panic, because now your every move might be watched. Every food you eat, every word you say, every emotion you feel. They believe it all imprints on the baby. Anger breeds demons. Lust stains the soul. Grief, It marks your child with weakness. You're not just a woman anymore. You're a vessel, a container for purity. One wrong step, one wrong thought, and people might say your baby was born wrong because of you, and the superstitions come flooding in. Tie a red string around your belly to keep away spirits. Avoid looking at anything deformed, or you'll curse the child. Don't sleep on your left side unless you want a boy. Don't cry, or the baby will come out melancholy. You laugh, but not too much. You eat, but not too little. You pray constantly, not because you're devout, but because you're scared. Every kick feels like a message from God, or a test. And heaven help you if you confess to feeling dread instead of joy. That's unnatural, that's selfish, that's heresy. The midwife marks your quickening in her mind. It tells her how far along you are, when to start preparing for birth, when to worry. The priest might bless you, but he's really blessing the soul inside. People begin treating you differently. Some offer food. Others keep their distance. Men avert their eyes. Children stare. You become something between sacred and cursed, revered and resented. A walking omen with feet inside you. And meanwhile, you lie awake at night, hand on your belly, counting every movement like it's a clock ticking towards something unknown. You wonder what kind of life this is. For you, for the baby, for the world they'll be born into. Quickening was supposed to be magical. But in the Middle Ages, magic always came with fear. If your body is a battlefield, then the church is the general issuing commands. Because in the Middle Ages, pregnancy wasn't just a personal event. It was a spiritual mission, and the church had a lot to say about your womb. From the moment a woman could conceive, she was seen as both sacred and suspect. On one hand, motherhood was a divine calling. Mary, Mother of Christ, was held up as the gold standard of purity, obedience, and miraculous delivery. On the other hand, you are no Mary, you are flesh, fallible, possibly sinful. So the church watched, judged, controlled. Conception itself was seen as either a blessing or a consequence. If you were married, your pregnancy was evidence of divine favor. If you were unmarried, it was evidence of sin, and possibly proof that the devil had found his way into your bed. And don't even think about explaining the difference between coercion and consent. Theology didn't bother with nuance. Sex outside marriage meant immorality. Pregnancy outside marriage meant proof of it. Your belly wasn't just growing, it was confessing. Midwives had to walk a careful line. The church sometimes accepted their knowledge but often distrusted it. Too much familiarity with female anatomy, too many herbal remedies, and suddenly you were accused of interfering with God's will. If a baby died in the womb, the midwife might be blamed. If it survived but looked strange, too red, too quiet, too small, people whispered about curses, sins, or demons passed from mother to child. And the mother? She wasn't just recovering, she was repenting. The doctrine of original sin meant your baby was born guilty. From their very first breath, they were considered spiritually unclean and in need of baptism, immediately. If a newborn died unbaptized, its soul was believed to linger in limbo, not punished, but not saved either. Which meant that every painful minute of labor came with spiritual urgency. Midwives were sometimes granted the right to perform emergency baptisms using holy water, if a priest couldn't arrive in time. And if he did arrive, he'd anoint the baby and bless the mother, but not with tenderness, with solemnity. Because childbirth was dangerous, yes, but so was womanhood. Women were warned to guard their thoughts during pregnancy. Don't envy others. Don't curse. Don't dream impure things. Don't question the church's teaching. A sinful mother was said to pass her flaws into the baby's soul. And if your child was born with a deformity, Some believed it was punishment for your secrets, your unspoken sins. You might be asked to confess before labor, or receive communion, or make a vow of chastity until after the baby was born, just to keep your soul pure for the event. Pain was considered part of the price, a punishment inherited from Eve. In sorrow shalt thou bring forth children. That wasn't a metaphor. That was a divine law. Pain wasn't just expected. It was righteous. In the end, the church didn't offer comfort. It offered control. Your pregnancy was no longer your own. It belonged to God, to Scripture, and to the ever-watchful eyes of a system that saw you not as a person, but as a vessel, holy but hollow. You're hungry, but not for food. Not really. You crave chalk, ash, clay. You want to chew on roasted turnip skins and smell the dirt on barley roots. Your mouth waters at things no one should eat. That's pregnancy in the Middle Ages. There's no understanding of nutrients or hormones, only warnings and superstitions. People believe your cravings aren't just strange, they're dangerous. They say that giving into them might deform the baby, or curse it, or warp its soul. If you dream of a rabbit and then eat one, your child might be born with a hair lip. If you long for strawberries and don't get them, a red birthmark might bloom on the baby's skin. If you crave meat and ignore it, the child may come out weak-blooded. But if you eat too much, you could spoil the milk, or anger the spirits, or make the child greedy. And God forbid you eat during a solar eclipse. That's a guaranteed demon baby. Women are told to control their desires, not just sexual, but culinary. Because a woman who hungers is a woman who risks. Your body isn't yours, remember? It's a sacred vessel now. And if you give in to temptation, if you sneak a bite of something strange, you might not suffer, but the baby will. At least, that's what they say. Midwives might offer advice. Brewed herbs to curb cravings, infused water to suppress the appetite, a small bundle of rosemary tied to your waist to keep wild desires at bay. But nothing really works. Your body keeps whispering strange instructions. Eat ash, chew bark, taste the rainwater dripping from the thatch roof. You try to obey. You try to resist. And all the while you wonder if your thoughts alone are enough to harm the child. But cravings aren't just physical. They're emotional too. You long for kindness, for warmth, for someone to tell you this is all okay. But kindness is in short supply. You're expected to suffer in silence. Be grateful. Be quiet. Smile politely while choking down pottage that smells like old socks. You want comfort. What you get is judgment. Some women believe in charms. Sleep with a stone under your tongue to keep strange dreams away. Tie a ribbon around your wrist soaked in mother's milk. Burn certain herbs to keep nightmares from staining the child's mind. It's all part of the ritual, controlling what you eat, think, feel, and fear. Because in this world, motherhood begins with obedience, and hunger is not just a symptom, it's a threat. So you chew slowly, nervously, hoping every bite doesn't shape your child's fate. And you wonder, not for the first time, if they'll be born healthy, or haunted by the things you dared to want. You're eating for two, at least in theory. In reality, you're eating what you can find, what you can keep down, and what won't kill you. In the Middle Ages, every bite was a gamble. Food wasn't guaranteed. Nutrition wasn't understood. And safety. That depended on season, luck, and your social standing. If you're a peasant, you're dining on whatever the fields and forests provide. Turnips, onions, black bread, dried beans, sometimes an egg, rarely meat. If you're a noblewoman, you have more variety, stews, cheeses, spiced meats, but even then, nothing comes with a guarantee. spoiled food wasn't always obvious. Bread made from rye might be laced with ergot, a toxic fungus that causes hallucinations, seizures, or miscarriage. Milk could sour before it even reached the table. Fish caught from stagnant waters might carry parasites. And let's not even talk about what passed for fresh in a time before refrigeration. People died from food poisoning all the time, and pregnant women were even more vulnerable. A bad meal could end not just your life, but the one inside you. Then there's the advice. Everyone has it. Eat almonds, they're good for the brain. Avoid eels, they'll make the baby slippery. Eat heart for a brave child. Don't eat hair, it'll curse the child with tremors. Drink wine to settle the womb. Don't drink wine, it'll make the baby mad. It's a confusing mess of half-truths, guesswork, and deeply rooted folklore. And somehow you're supposed to navigate it with a body that already feels like it's turning against you. Sometimes you're just hungry. Desperately, constantly hungry. But gluttony is a sin, and people are watching. If you eat too much, they'll whisper that you're feeding your greed, not your child. If you don't eat enough, they'll accuse you of carelessness or vanity. There is no winning. Just the daily dance between not enough and too much, while your body swells and aches and craves and rejects. The noble class fares better, of course, but not by much. They have cooks, pantries, access to spices and game, but even their food is heavy, salted, oily, and dangerously rich. Gorging on roast pork or candied almonds might sound luxurious, but it could lead to indigestion, miscarriage, or womb fever, a term used for infections no one knew how to treat. And if you vomit after a meal, some might think it's natural. Others might say it's a sign of God's displeasure, or a curse working its way out of your blood. So you pick carefully. You chew slowly. You pray over every bite. And you try not to think about the worm you once found in your barley gruel, or the mold growing silently in your bread bin. Because hunger may be a constant companion, but safety is not. Every meal is a miracle. Every full belly a quiet, dangerous victory. Pregnancy doesn't pause for pain. In fact, it invites more of it. And when you're carrying life in a time before medicine, before antibiotics, before basic hygiene, every ache is a warning, and every fever could be your last. Your body isn't just growing, it's struggling, and no one can truly help you. In the Middle Ages, ailments were treated with prayers, poultices, and painful guesses. The science of pregnancy? Mostly superstition stitched together with wishful thinking. You start with the minor miseries: nausea that never ends, swelling in your hands and feet, back pain that makes you weep when no one's looking. You might be bleeding from your gums. You might be dizzy, breathless, or suddenly unable to hold down even water. Then things get worse. Constipation that stretches on for days, possibly weeks. Infections that no one understands, let alone treats. Your urine might turn cloudy or dark. You might develop chills. And people will say your body is adjusting, or God is testing you, or the baby is sapping your strength because he's going to be a strong boy. None of it helps. None of it heals you. A midwife might try her best. She'll brew you teas: nettle, raspberry leaf, yarrow. Some help, some don't. She might bleed you with leeches, or offer a compress that smells like boiling swamp moss. But if your fever climbs too high, or your belly cramps too hard, there's no real recourse. A healer might mutter over your bed with dried animal parts tied to her belt. A priest might bless you, or accuse you, or both. One terrifying threat is childbed fever, a catch-all term for postpartum infections we now know are caused by bacteria introduced during labor. But no one knows about germs. They think you've been cursed, or that your soul is at war with your womb. And even during pregnancy, infection is always lurking. A simple scratch on your foot can fester. A rotten tooth can spread infection to your blood. If you grow too pale, they say your blood is cold. If you grow too red, they say your humors are too hot. Either way, you're out of balance. And nothing, not prayer, not poultices, not even coin, can promise a cure. So you learn to endure. You stay upright when your bones feel like melting wax. You force smiles when your legs barely hold you. You nod politely when the priest tells you that suffering is holy. But deep down, you start to realize that your greatest threat isn't childbirth. It's the slow, daily toll your body is paying without rest, relief, or remedy. In the Middle Ages, ailments didn't get names, they got funerals. If you're poor and pregnant in the Middle Ages, congratulations. You've just been handed a sentence with no jury and no defense. Your body is now both worker and incubator. There's no maternity leave, no village midwife on standby, and no concern for your comfort. You rise before the sun, belly heavy, ankles swollen, back burning. You fetch water from a distant stream, bend to weed the fields, and kneel to scrub stone floors until your knuckles bleed. Pregnancy is not an excuse. It is simply another task you are expected to perform, quietly, obediently, and without fail. Your food is rationed, and you're always hungry. Your clothes don't fit anymore, but you cannot spare cloth for new ones. You're wrapped in patched layers, trying to hide the growth that will eventually betray you to every gossipy mouth in town. If you're married, your husband might offer grunts of acknowledgement or bitter jokes about having another mouth to feed. If you're not, the town will offer you worse: silence, scorn, or the hard edge of a wooden door closing in your face. There's no soft bed waiting for you. Just straw and hay and maybe a worn wool blanket if you're lucky. You sleep badly, if at all, with rats scratching nearby and the cold biting through the gaps in the timber. You're kept awake by cramps, by nausea, by the sound of your own teeth chattering. There's no doctor to call, no midwife to consult, just old women with conflicting stories and herbs that might help or poison you. You try to rest, but rest is stolen by labor. Fields need tending, animals need feeding, clothes need mending. And if your body starts to cramp early, if you bleed in the middle of a task, no one notices, or they notice and don't care. Miscarriages happen all the time. You're not the first, you won't be the last. Grief is a luxury for the rich. If you survive the pregnancy, the birth will happen wherever you are. In a barn, in the dirt, in your shared hut beside snoring relatives. There will be no clean linens, no skilled hands unless someone nearby takes pity and fetches the village midwife in time. Even then, she may arrive late. Or not at all, and when the baby is born, if it survives, you're still expected to be on your feet within days. You will wrap your leaking breasts, press down your torn abdomen, and go back to working, cleaning, serving. No celebration, no relief, just the beginning of another cycle of exhaustion and risk. In the Middle Ages, being poor meant survival was already a daily fight. But being pregnant and poor, that made your body the battlefield and the casualty. Now flip the script. You're not a peasant, you're noble. Pregnant in silks, not rags. The fire in your chamber never goes out, and your meals are delivered by trembling hands. You rest on a feather-stuffed bed, beneath tapestries so thick they silence even your deepest fears. But don't be fooled. Your pregnancy may be cushioned by wealth, but it's not free from danger. In fact, it's steeped in it. Because for noble women, pregnancy isn't just personal, it's political. Your body is a vessel of lineage, a factory for heirs. Every flutter in your belly is watched with eagle eyes. Every craving discussed behind closed doors. Every symptom noted like royal strategy. The gender of your child could determine alliances, inheritances, wars. A boy? Triumph? A girl? tolerated. Another girl whispers, disappointment. Quiet prayers for next time. You are adored not for who you are, but for what you can produce. You are pampered, yes, but also imprisoned. You may be placed on strict bed rest, not out of care, but control. The midwives report not just to you, but to your family, to your husband, to the court. Your diet is meticulously prepared. Roasted quail, spiced wine, almonds, goat's milk, all carefully chosen to strengthen the womb and ensure a healthy boy. You eat even when you're nauseated. You smile even when your back spasms. Because weakness invites suspicion, and nobles don't suffer in public. There are rituals, of course, holy relics placed under your pillow, charms sewn into your bodice. A priest visits weekly to anoint your swollen belly with blessed oil. But none of it calms your mind. Because you know the truth. All the wealth in the world cannot buy safety. You've heard the stories. Ladies bled to death on linen sheets. Stillborn babies buried in gold coffins. Noblemen who remarried before the old wife was cold. And if the birth goes wrong, the physician is summoned, usually a man, often arrogant and sometimes worse than useless. He may order fumigations, forced vomiting, or prayers shouted over your body while you labor. If things grow desperate, he might perform a crude surgery, one that saves the baby but not the mother. Because, again, your value is tied to what you deliver, not whether you survive. Yet still, you are expected to smile, to recline with grace, to accept your gilded captivity with dignity. The court poet may write sonnets about your glow. The servants may whisper tales of divine favor. But inside, you are just another woman caught in the same old cycle, hoped for, prayed over, pushed to the brink for the sake of a legacy that may never even bear your name. Pregnancy in nobility isn't comfort. It's performance. And behind the silk curtains, every noblewoman knows she may wear a crown, but she bleeds like any other. If you're pregnant in the Middle Ages, dressing yourself becomes a daily exercise in frustration, improvisation, and above all, discomfort. Forget maternity gowns or stretchy waistbands. Clothes in this world are not made to adapt. They're made to restrain, to signify class, to please the eye, or to endure hard labor. Your changing body is not part of the design. It is a complication, a burden to conceal, constrain, or simply ignore. If you're a peasant woman, you wear what you've always worn. A coarse linen shift, a wool kirtle, maybe a patched apron tied tightly at the waist. But now, as your belly swells and your hips widen, that apron digs in. The laces stretch. The cloth grows thin from strain. You don't get a new dress. You undo the belt and pray it doesn't fall off while working. If the fabric rips, you stitch it back. If it no longer closes, you pin it shut. If you have nothing else to wear, you wrap a shawl around your middle and pretend not to notice the stares. Pregnancy doesn't earn you fashion. It earns you workarounds. For noble women, the situation is different, but not better. Your gowns are elegant, layered, and heavy. They're built to flatter a silhouette, not accommodate one that shifts by the week. Your lady's maid might adjust the ties and back, let out the seams in secret, or replace decorative fasteners with hidden hooks. But even this requires discretion, because in many circles it's considered unseemly to look pregnant. A visible bump too early could cause gossip. Too large a stomach could be seen as a sign of indulgence or demonic interference. So some noble women wore loose surcoats or layered cloaks designed to obscure the body entirely. It wasn't about comfort. It was about hiding the truth from the world until it was too big to deny. There's also superstition tied to garments. Some believed tying a red ribbon around the belly could prevent miscarriage. Others stitched protective symbols into hems or wore amulets between layers. A charm sewn into your sleeve might ward off the evil eye. A saint's relic, hidden in your bodice, might protect the child. You carry these not out of belief alone, but because you're afraid not to. And none of this takes into account the physical struggle of dressing. Every morning, pulling on a gown becomes a battle. Your feet disappear beneath your belly. Your arms tire from fastening laces. You sweat under the layers. You feel faint. You feel trapped. But you can't say any of this aloud. You're expected to maintain composure, to appear graceful, glowing, and devout, while your body pulls apart under fabric that doesn't care. Fashion in the Middle Ages wasn't designed for pregnancy. It was designed to serve modesty, status, and the illusion of control. And when your belly grows beyond those limits, you learn to adapt, endure, and hide, because the clothes won't change for you. You change for them. You're sick, swollen, scared, and sore. Your joints ache. Your womb twists. Your dreams are haunted by pain and stillbirth. But you're told not to complain. You're told to pray. So you do. But you also whisper. To the old woman who lives near the woods. To the midwife who knows too much. To the herbalist who walks with her head down and her pouch full of forbidden cures. Because in the Middle Ages, when medicine fails or simply doesn't exist, people turn to folk magic. Not openly, of course, not in front of priests. The church condemns magic as heresy, sorcery, or devil's work, but everyone knows someone who knows something. A neighbor who grew 3 healthy boys after drinking boiled nettle every new moon. A cousin whose miscarriage stopped only after sleeping with a dead mole under her pillow. It sounds absurd, but it's all you have. And when your baby kicks sideways for days and won't settle, you'll try anything. You might drink teas made from raspberry leaves to prevent miscarriage. Chew on fennel seeds to ease labor. Carry an amulet made of iron to protect against spirits. Burn mugwort under your bed to repel bad dreams. Some remedies are harmless. Others, not so much. Certain herbs, like pennyroyal or tansy, are whispered about behind hands. They can end a pregnancy if taken in strong doses. Officially, these are purgatives. Unofficially, they're desperation in powdered form. Dangerous, illegal, sometimes fatal. But when a woman is starving, afraid, or ashamed, even poison starts to look like salvation. Midwives and herbalists walk a fine line. They know the rituals, the recipes, the chants. But one mistake, one death, one angry husband, one nosy priest, and they could be accused of witchcraft. You've heard the stories. Women dragged to trial for bearing afterbirth wrong, for predicting a birth too accurately, for using too much sage. The line between wise woman and witch is thin and drawn by men with torches. But still, these women help. Quietly, carefully. A sachet of lavender under the mattress. A charm tied to your ankle. A carved token pressed into your hand during a sleepless night. They don't promise safety. They promise something. And when you're pregnant in the Middle Ages, something is better than silence. You learn the power of whispers. You learn what to say and what not to. You learn how to grind herbs in the dark and pray no one hears. Because in this world, there's no such thing as safe. Only secrecy. Time becomes your enemy. Each day stretches like taffy pulled too thin, long, heavy, slow. You mark time not with calendars, but with changes in your body. Another layer of swelling, another shift in your center of gravity, another restless night where the baby kicks and your joints throb like they're filled with gravel. The Middle Ages doesn't offer distraction. No books to lose yourself in, no television to drown out fear, No apps counting down the days with hopeful milestones. There's just work, pain, and waiting. The first month was denial, the second, suspicion, the third, nausea and whispers. But now you're 5, 6, maybe even 7 months in. Your belly is a dome, your ribs are bruised from within, and your feet have vanished beneath your growing form. You waddle through doorways, breathing like you've run a race. You can't sleep on your back, and lying on your side causes cramps. You're always hot, even in winter, and yet no one really helps. You're expected to do your share, swollen or not. Kneel for prayer. Milk the goats. Fetch firewood. Because pregnant isn't an illness, it's just another duty. Your emotions swing like a broken bell. One day you laugh so hard you cry. The next you cry so hard you can't breathe. But people don't ask how you feel. They ask whether you've chosen a name, whether it's a boy or a girl, though no one can actually know. They ask if you've prepared a cradle, chosen a godparent, if your husband has made an offering to the saints. But they don't ask whether you're scared or lonely or quietly counting every kick like a superstition to keep death away. The days blend together. You might not leave the house for weeks. Your legs are stiff, your mind drifts. Sometimes you forget what day it is. Sometimes you forget what it's like not to ache. You're fed enough, maybe. But food tastes like wood. You've run out of stories. You've run out of small talk. The midwife tells you to rest, but rest is impossible when your bladder wakes you every hour, when your skin itches from the stretch, when your heart hammers from worry you can't name out loud. And every time you feel the baby shift, your breath catches, because it means they're alive, but also reminds you they might not stay that way. You hear the stories, stillbirths, babies born too early, breech deliveries that end in silence. There's no guarantee, no comfort. Only the crawl of days and the mounting pressure of the unknown. You count days in prayers. You count them in drops of blood you hope are harmless, in hours spent staring at the ceiling. And when people ask how far along you are, you lie, because time is no longer something you track. It's something you survive. The fear is always there. It doesn't come all at once, like a scream. It creeps in, day by day. A tightening in your chest when the baby kicks too low. A quick intake of breath when a cramp lasts too long. You've heard too many stories. You know too many names. Women who went into labor and never came back. Babies born blue and cold. Mothers bled dry while priests muttered last rites. The Middle Ages does not sugarcoat childbirth. It is brutal, it is unpredictable, and it is yours to face alone. There's no hospital, no sterile room, no emergency button to press. You'll give birth where you sleep, on straw or in a low wooden bed, surrounded by a few trusted women, and maybe a midwife if she arrives in time. There will be no anesthesia, no surgical backup. Only hot water, torn rags, whispered prayers, and hope. And that's what terrifies you most. Hope. Because it is not enough. You can hope that the baby turns, that the pain is bearable, that the cord does not wrap like a noose, that your womb does not tear, that you do not bleed for days, that you do not see the fear in the midwife's eyes when she realizes the baby isn't coming out. You know the signs now. You know what a hard labor means. It means pushing for hours until your voice goes hoarse and your eyes burst red. It means breaking your own body to open a door that might never fully open. It means vomiting from the pain, biting wood to keep from screaming. It means feeling your bones grind like stones under pressure. And no matter how rich or poor you are, your body doesn't care. It will do what it must, and it might kill you in the process. There are prayers for this. Prayers to saints who died in childbirth, amulets tied around your thighs, candles lit for the Virgin Mary. But none of these can promise survival. None can reach inside you and pull the baby out safely. And the church has its own ideas. Some believe your pain is sacred, that you must suffer to earn your child, that Eve's sin runs through your veins and only agony can burn it out. So, you wait. Each kick reminds you of what's coming. You rehearse what you'll say if you start bleeding too early. You count the steps to where the midwife lives. You hide clean cloth in a basket by your bed, just in case. You plan your birth like a siege, because it is one. And when the first real pain comes, when your stomach tightens like a fist and doesn't release, your heart doesn't leap. It drops, because this is it. No turning back, just hours or days between now and whatever happens next. You're not brave, you're terrified, but you do it anyway, because in the Middle Ages, childbirth wasn't the miracle. Survival was. There's no announcement, no trumpet, no gentle warning. Labor begins the way storms do. Suddenly, overwhelmingly, without negotiation. Maybe it's a slow, low ache that coils in your back like a serpent. Maybe it's a hard, shocking snap of pain that makes you double over in the garden. Either way, you know, it has begun. If you're lucky, someone is nearby. A sister, a neighbor, a child who knows where to run. The message is passed fast, by foot, by voice. She started. That's all it takes to set the ritual in motion. Someone fetches the midwife. Someone starts boiling water. Someone lights candles or grabs clean rags, if there are any to be found. You are helped or hauled to your bed or to the birthing stool if one is available. Your hair is loosened. Your body is stripped of tight clothing. Your legs are spread. Your dignity, that was left behind months ago. The women gather, only women. No men are allowed. Not in the room. Not in this sacred, brutal space. This is a world of blood and breath and screams, and men do not belong here. Even the physician, if one comes, waits outside unless something goes terribly wrong. Inside, it's sweat, whispers, hands holding yours when the pain surges, prayers muttered under breath, cloth between your teeth when you scream. The pain comes in waves. Some break you. Some leave you numb. There is no relief, no medicine, just the raw force of your body trying to split itself open. You bleed. You cry. You beg for help that no one can give. The midwife tells you to push, or not to, or to hold still. She checks you. She listens. She knows the rhythm of birth, the signs of danger. But she is not a miracle worker. She can guide, but she cannot save. Not always. You might labor for hours, or days. You might drift in and out of consciousness. You might hear singing, or sobbing. You might vomit. You might curse. And still the pain continues. Because this is what it means to be a mother here. This is what it takes. You pay in flesh, and while you suffer, others wait. Outside, in silence, in dread, because birth is not assumed to be joyful. It is assumed to be lethal, for you, for the child, or both. The room grows darker as the hours stretch. Or maybe it's your vision, tunneling down to a pinpoint of effort and agony. You lose track of time, you become pain. Until suddenly, the midwife shouts something. Her voice rises. There is movement, urgency. Then, crying, or not, you try to lift your head, but you're too weak. You feel the absence in your belly. You feel something wet placed on your chest. And if the baby is crying, screaming, you cry too. From pain, yes, but also from survival. From sheer, wretched luck. Because now, finally, the hardest part is over. But the next part? That's something else entirely. Then it happens. Suddenly, terrifyingly, beautifully. A rush of warmth and wet. A cry, sharp and small, like a cut through silence. And just like that, they are here. Your child, your blood, your gamble. The birth has come. But this is not the end. This is only the second beginning. The room shifts. The midwife moves quickly, wrapping the baby in cloth torn from a spare tunic. She checks its color, its breath, the strength of its scream. If the baby is quiet, too quiet, she rubs its back, breathes into its lungs, whispers old prayers known only to women. The others gather to watch, to murmur their own words of protection. If it cries, that's good. Noise means life. Stillness? Stillness means something else. The cord is cut with a sharpened blade or a piece of flint. No sterilization, no clamps. Just swift, practiced movements. The afterbirth is delivered, painful and sudden. Some women faint. Some keep bleeding. Some don't stop. Then comes the inspection. Is the baby whole? Are its limbs straight? Is there hair? Is there a birthmark? Is it red? Pale. Breathing too fast? Too slow? The mother barely hears any of it. She is floating, drowning, dying, awakening all at once. The blood keeps coming. Her body feels hollow, ruined, but she holds the child, or is shown the child, and for a moment something ancient in her awakens. This is hers. This tiny, squalling thing was inside her just moments ago, and now it's part of the world. There are traditions. The baby is not named yet. Not until the priest comes. Not until baptism. It is a soul, yes, but not a fully claimed one. Some women refuse to look too closely, not out of neglect, but fear, because babies die, frequently, sometimes within hours, sometimes before the sun sets. And if that happens, better not to have bonded too deeply, better not to know the shape of the eyes or the curl of the fingers, better not to remember the smell. But if the baby lives, if it latches to nurse, if it keeps crying, if it clenches its fists and refuses to fade, then there is a moment of light. The midwife smiles. The other women bless themselves. The air softens. The mother may cry or sleep or simply stare at the ceiling. She has been through fire. She has paid in pain. And for now, just for now, it has not been in vain. Silence. That's the sound you fear most. More than screaming, more than tearing, more than blood. Because when the baby arrives and does not cry, time stops. The room, once bustling, muttering, bustling with nervous energy, falls quiet. The midwife's hands don't hesitate, but her face does. She moves fast, checking breath, pulse, color. But the air has changed. It's thick now, heavy with dread. Sometimes it's simple. The baby is stunned. The birth was long or too fast, and the child needs coaxing. The midwife may slap the soles of its feet, rub its chest with a wool cloth dipped in wine, or swing it gently to force breath into stiff lungs. She might whisper words, real or not, a mix of Latin and folk tongues passed down through generations of desperate women. Sometimes the baby gasps, a wheeze, a cry, a sputter, and the world starts moving again. But other times, nothing. The baby lies still, a perfect little body, motionless and pale. The women exchange looks, unspoken and ancient. They've seen it before, they know what it means. But no one says it aloud. Not yet. The mother is still bleeding, panting, not quite present. She asks, "Is it a boy?" Or, "Can I hold her?" And sometimes the answer is a lie, meant to buy her a few more minutes of innocence before the grief is delivered. There is no doctor to rush in, no machines, no reviving heat lamp, no second chance. If the baby doesn't breathe now, it won't breathe later. This is the only window, and it's closing. The midwife tries everything. A drop of brandy on the tongue, a pinch, a prayer. She might pretend to swaddle the child, pretending it still has a chance so the mother doesn't collapse completely. And if the priest has already arrived, he may attempt baptism anyway, because the soul must be claimed, even if the body never lives. The holy water touches a cold forehead. A name is whispered, the final blessing given to a life that never truly began. There's no morgue, no certificate. If the baby is dead, it will be wrapped in cloth, sometimes the same one meant for swaddling, and taken quietly away. If it was baptized, it is buried in consecrated ground. If not, well, that's when things get complicated. The church is strict about souls. Unbaptized babies may be denied Christian burial. Some say their souls linger in limbo. Others bury them in secret, hoping mercy will outweigh rules. And the mother, she weeps, or screams, or says nothing for days. Sometimes she blames herself. Sometimes others do. Maybe she ate the wrong thing, prayed too little, cursed too much. In the Middle Ages, no one knows the truth, so blame fills the silence. A baby that doesn't cry is more than a tragedy. It's an omen, a judgment, a shadow that will follow the mother long after her body heals. The blood doesn't stop. That's the first sign. The midwife presses cloth after cloth between the mother's legs, but the red keeps coming. Thick, dark, endless. Her skin grows pale. Her lips turn blue. Her eyes don't focus anymore. She's there, but slipping fast. The room changes. The air turns to stone. Because now, everyone knows, she might not make it. Childbirth is a risk, not a right. In the Middle Ages, it's one of the leading causes of death for women. They may survive the labor, the pushing, even the tearing, but hemorrhage is ruthless. Infection waits with quiet breath. A stuck placenta, a uterine rupture, none of it is preventable. None of it is treatable. You survive if you're lucky, or you don't. The women in the room do what they can. Herbal compresses, boiled wine poured in small sips, prayers spoken louder now, more urgently. Someone runs for a priest if one isn't already there. The last rites must be given quickly. The priest anoints her forehead with oil, muttering Latin over her fading consciousness. If she's strong enough, she might mumble a final confession. If not, her silence will speak for her. If she dies before the child is born, the midwife may try to save the baby. It's called a post-mortem birth, and it is gruesome. A desperate, bloody attempt to cut the child from her cooling body in time. Most of the time it fails. But they try anyway, because it's the only thing they can do. If she dies after, the mourning begins immediately. The body is washed, dressed, and laid out in the very same room where she gave life and lost her own. Sometimes the baby is placed beside her, still feeding, unaware. Sometimes the baby is carried away, screaming, motherless from the start. For the husband, if there is one, grief comes in a strange cloak. He has a child now, but no wife. He may remarry within weeks, out of necessity, not love. Infants need milk. Wet nurses are rare and expensive. A man without a wife is a man without a future. Life moves forward, harsh, fast, and without mercy. But for the others, the women who were there, the ones who watched her fade, there is a memory that doesn't leave. The smell of blood. The silence after the screaming stops. The way her hand grew cold in theirs. And the child who survives with no knowledge of the cost. In the Middle Ages, there is no monument for a woman who dies in childbirth. No statue, no record. Just a mound in the churchyard, a name spoken in hushed tones, and a child who will grow up never knowing the sound of her voice. She is not a doctor, she is not a priest, she is not a noble, but in that moment, in that room, the midwife is everything. She holds life in her hands, not metaphorically but literally. She is your guide, your guardian, your last hope and first comfort. In the Middle Ages, a midwife is one of the few people who understand a woman's body not through theology, but through experience. Through countless births, endless nights, and memories etched in blood and screams. She may be old, stooped, scarred by the many things she's seen and the many women she couldn't save. Or she may be young, still learning, still afraid. But regardless of her age or station, her reputation is everything. Midwives live or die by trust. One mistake, one stillbirth, one infection, one whispered accusation of sorcery, and her life can be torn down overnight. And yet they keep going. Because someone has to. She knows how to feel for the baby's position, how to wrap the belly with linen when the child drops too soon. She carries bundles of herbs tied in leather, not just for healing but for courage. She reads the mother's sweat, listens for changes in breath, watches the eyes, the tremors, the color of the lips. There is no stethoscope, just instinct, and history and desperation. The church watches her closely, too knowledgeable, and she's suspicious, too successful, and she's unnatural, too independent, and she's dangerous. She is often summoned to baptize infants if no priest arrives in time, a power granted only for emergencies. But if she baptizes too many, or speaks too boldly, she risks being labeled a heretic or a witch. The line she walks is razor thin. Still, women trust her. More than they trust the priest. More than the husbands waiting outside. Because she has been in the room. She has seen what it takes. She does not flinch at blood. She does not scold for screaming. She does not leave when things go dark. And it's not just the birth. She is there afterward, too. Pressing cloth to wounds, binding bellies, helping the baby latch, soothing fevers, clearing the air of superstition with small rituals. She may be the first person your child sees. She may be the only person who holds your hand when you slip away. She is blamed when things go wrong. Rarely thanked when they go right. She is vital but expendable. Respected and feared. She knows secrets no man ever hears. She keeps them, carries them, bleeds for them. In the stories, midwives are often background figures, but in reality, they were the backbone of women's survival. In a world without medicine, without rights, without certainty, she was your best, and often only, chance. He waits. That's what the husband does. He waits outside the door, pacing, praying, pretending he isn't afraid. Childbirth is not his world. It's a place where his authority ends, where his presence is unwelcome, where his power, so firm in every other part of life, becomes useless. He can't stop the pain. He can't ease the blood. He can't protect her. If he's a peasant, he might be in the field, told only when it's over. If he's a merchant, he might hover nearby, hands folded, voice low, asking too many questions the midwife won't answer. If he's a nobleman, he may be in the chapel, offering coins for a safe delivery, bargaining with God while his wife screams alone behind closed doors. Some men truly care. They weep when they hear their wives cry. They clutch the wall when silence falls too suddenly. They wait with sleepless eyes and hold their newborns with shaking hands. Others are more practical. They ask if it's a boy. They count fingers. They want to know if the wife will survive, because if not, they must plan. Mourning clothes, a new match, a wet nurse. In some cases, the husband never sees the baby. If it dies, the midwife may bury it quickly. If it lives but the mother dies, he may hold it like something foreign. His blood, yes, but not yet his responsibility. If both survive, he may step in gently, proudly, or not at all. Paternal affection varies wildly, as does involvement. Some men soften. Others vanish. If the child is male, the husband gains pride, perhaps status, maybe even property. If it's female, he gains a liability, another dowry to prepare, another mouth to feed. And if it's deformed, weak, or sickly, he gains a burden. Some men accept that, others don't. In the rarest cases, a man may be present at the birth, but this is almost never the norm. His presence might be considered indecent, unlucky, or offensive. Birth is sacred, secret, painful. Male curiosity is not welcomed here. And yet, everything that happens behind that door affects him. His lineage, his household, his wealth, his name. So he waits, sometimes in silence, sometimes in prayer, sometimes in drink. And when the door opens, when the midwife steps out, blood on her hands and a name on her tongue, he must become whatever the situation demands. A father, a widower, a man reborn by proxy. Because in the Middle Ages the husband may not labor, he may not bleed, but he lives with what comes out of that room, for better or for worse. It has made it through the gate. This new little soul, screaming and squirming, eyes still sealed by birth. The child is here, alive, and now the fight begins anew. Because the first days after birth in the Middle Ages are not soft, sweet lullabies or candlelit cradles. They are dangerous, fragile hours, teetering between survival and silence. Infancy is not a promise, it's a gamble. The baby is washed in warm, not too hot water if it's available. This first bath is ceremonial and cautious. It is both cleansing and symbolic, washing away the blood, the sin, the uncertainty. Then it is wrapped tightly in swaddling cloths, not for comfort, but for control. Medieval people believed babies were born weak, bent, and unfinished. Their limbs must be straightened, their bodies trained, their forms corrected before it's too late. Arms pinned, legs bound, for hours, for days, sometimes for months. The baby is kept warm, though warmth is a luxury. If you're poor, that means burying the bundle in straw and hoping the hearth doesn't die during the night. If you're noble, a cradle by the fire is better, but still no guarantee. Drafts kill. Cold air suffocates. The line between shivering and stillness is razor thin. Then there's feeding. If the mother survived and can nurse, the baby is placed to her breast within hours. But nursing isn't instant. The baby may not latch. The milk may not come. And there are no lactation consultants, only old women with conflicting advice and herbal brews to draw the milk down. If the mother is too weak, too ill, or dead, a wet nurse may be found, if one can be afforded. Otherwise, the baby is fed animal milk, diluted, warmed, and often fatal. And still, the child cries. Wails, turns red, this is normal. But in a time when crying could be misread as illness or possession, each shriek brings anxiety. Superstitions flare. Is it a sign? Is the child marked? Is it cursed? Some families tie charms around the baby's neck, hang iron by the cradle, whisper psalms while rocking. Anything to keep the devil away, or death, or both. There is no margin for error. A simple fever might take the child in the night. A cough might turn to choking. A rash might be ignored until it becomes rot. Many babies don't make it to baptism. Others die within days of it. Still, the family waits, watches, prays. Every breath is a gift. Every hour survived is a victory. and the mother, if she's there, holds the baby like glass. She doesn't sleep, doesn't blink. She is already preparing for the possibility of loss, even while praying for life. She sings, but softly, hopes, but cautiously, because in the Middle Ages the first few days of life are the steepest climb of all. The church is never far from the bed of a birthing woman or her child. In the Middle Ages, the moment a baby draws breath, the church leans forward, because it isn't just a child, it's a soul, unbaptized, unprotected, unclaimed. And the longer that condition lingers, the more dangerous it becomes. Baptism is urgent. The sooner, the better, ideally within hours. If the baby is weak or premature, the midwife may perform the baptism herself using holy water, just in case death comes quickly. It's called baptismus in extremis, a last-ditch sanctification. It doesn't require a priest, just water, intention, and haste. Because if the child dies unbaptized, the soul is believed to drift. Some say in limbo, others in shadow. Not hell, but not heaven either. A tragic in-between. Parents fear this deeply. Once the baby is strong enough, or, if time allows, a formal baptism is arranged. The church doors open. The bells may ring. Godparents are named, a priest performs the rite, and the baby is officially welcomed into the faith. The water is poured. The sign of the cross is drawn. Oil is applied. Candles flicker. The child becomes part of the community, not just in body, but in eternity. But it's not all celebration. The church also begins its watch. It records the birth, begins tracking family obligations, and notes whether the parents are married, the child legitimate, the godparents appropriately devout. If something's amiss, it may be whispered about later, during communion, in confession, behind curtained sanctuaries. Church doctrine also governs the mother. Until she is churched, that is, formally purified in a post-birth ritual, she is considered unclean. The rite of churching is often delayed several weeks or even months, depending on her recovery and the priest's availability. Until then, she may be barred from touching holy things or entering sacred spaces. Her blood, once seen as miraculous in pregnancy, is now suspect. A reminder of original sin and Eve's curse. There's relief in baptism, a sense that the worst has passed, that the baby has been anchored to the world, but there is also pressure. The church owns the moment. It marks the baby's name, soul, and future, and from that moment forward, the child's life is not just in the hands of its parents, but in the grip of God, as interpreted by men in robes. And so the family returns home, baby in arms, soul officially sanctioned, heart still unsure. Because even with baptism, even with holy oil and sacred words, the road ahead is long, and no ritual can promise what the days will bring. If the baby lives, if the mother survives, if the worst has passed, then a new struggle begins. Feeding, not the modern kind with bottles, formula, or advice forms, but the kind that begins with cracked skin, swollen breasts, and the desperate need for something that should be simple but rarely is. Nourishment. Breastfeeding in the Middle Ages is expected. Natural. Mandatory if you're poor. But natural doesn't mean easy. The baby might not latch. The milk might not come. The mother may be too weak, fevered, or grieving to produce enough. There's no pump, no medicine to boost supply, just the old ways, warm compresses, herbal teas, prayer, and pain. A woman's breasts become her baby's entire world, and her own torment. They ache, they leak. They can become infected. There's a word for it. Milk fever. Today, we'd call it mastitis. Back then, it was a mystery, a curse, something that made mothers delirious with fever, sweat, and agony, sometimes to the point of death. If a mother dies or cannot nurse, the baby's fate hinges on one hope: a wet nurse. These women are paid, or sometimes coerced, to feed another's child. Sometimes they're recently widowed, with milk still flowing. Sometimes they nurse their own child alongside yours. The practice is more common among the wealthy. A noble woman might never feed her own baby, delegating that role to a lower-class woman hired for her breasts. It's a strange intimacy, one body feeding another's legacy, but there's judgment too. The church sometimes frowns on wet nurses, especially if the mother is healthy. Moralists accuse noble women of being vain, lazy, or unnatural. Others claim shared milk passes on temperament, sin, or social inferiority. Still, wet nursing persists, because hunger kills faster than gossip. For the poor, there is no wet nurse. If a mother cannot feed, alternatives are limited and dangerous. Goat's milk might be boiled, cooled, and fed from a rag. Some families use broth or grain water, soaking cloths or spoons. But these are poor substitutes. Contamination is likely. Many babies sicken. Some starve. Others are fed by women in the village willing to help, but only if they have enough to spare. Feeding is constant. Every few hours, day and night. There's no schedule, no privacy, just exhaustion and instinct. The baby roots and cries. The mother groans and winces. The bond grows not from bliss, but from survival. And when the baby finally sleeps, full and heavy in the arms of a woman barely holding herself together, it feels like a miracle. Because it is. A name is not just a label in the Middle Ages. It's a shield, a banner, a whispered promise to God. It is chosen carefully, sometimes in haste, sometimes in ritual, always with the weight of history pressing down. Because names are not just words here. They are legacy, protection, memory, and hope. The Church insists that every baptized child receive a Christian name. Saints are popular choices. John, Mary, Peter, Agnes. These names carry more than reverence. They carry insurance. To name your child after a saint is to tie their life to divine favor, to give them someone to watch over them in a world where death watches too. Sometimes the name is chosen before birth, especially if the family expects an heir. But often it's decided in the hours after, in the hazy light of survival. If the baby is sickly, the name might be given at the first sign of breath, just in case. A rushed baptism, a name whispered with urgency. If the child lives, the name is repeated later, more formally. If they die, at least they were known. Some names are passed down through generations, honoring grandparents, dead siblings, or patrons. Others are chosen to please the powerful, to align with godparents, to solidify inheritance claims. Occasionally, names reflect the circumstances of birth. Children born on saints' feast days might be named for the saint in question. A difficult labor might inspire names like Benedicto, meaning blessed, or Vita, meaning life. Illegitimate children are rarely granted the luxury of grand names. They may be given common, dull, or even mocking names. Their status follows them, etched in syllables. Foundlings, abandoned babies, are sometimes named after the day they're discovered, or the church steps where they're left. These names become brands, not blessings. And the mother? She may have no say at all. If she is unmarried, grieving, or dead, others choose. A priest, a midwife, a distant relative. The child's name may be the only thing left to them from their mother, or the first thing taken away. But for those who survive, who are named and held and swaddled in hope, the name becomes a talisman. It's carved into prayer books, whispered during storms, written on graves. Names are all that many of them will leave behind. In the Middle Ages, to name a child was not just to claim them. It was to prepare them for a world that might forget everything about them, except this one word. The baby is out. The cries have faded. The room has gone still. But for the mother, it isn't over. Not even close. Postpartum recovery in the Middle Ages is not a gentle process of rest and regeneration. It is a raw, exposed period where your body, ravaged by labor, is expected to return to duty whether it wants to or not. There's no leave, no medicine, no organized care. There's only you, the ache, and whatever time your body gives you before the next demand. If you survived the birth without bleeding out, you're already ahead. But that doesn't mean you're fine. Your womb must shrink. Your bleeding continues. Lochia, they call it. Weeks of slow, steady discharge that no one speaks of but everyone watches. It's seen as necessary. If it stops too early, it's feared. The blood must drain. If it doesn't, you're cursed, sick, or soon to die. Your muscles burn, your bones feel shattered. Your breasts throb with swelling milk or drain into soaked cloths if the baby doesn't feed. Your back aches from nights of sitting upright. Your feet swell. You can't lift, can't kneel, can't clean yourself properly. And yet, expectations don't shift. You're still a wife, a mother, a worker. You must tend to the child, the house, the food. The break is brief, if it comes at all. Pain is managed with folk remedies, steamed herbs, poultices, warmed stones. If you're lucky, an old woman prepares a postpartum bath, salt water, nettle, or chamomile to ease the tearing. But often, there's no time, no water, no one to help. You walk with a limp. Sit on one side. Clench your teeth every time you move. You bleed through every cloth you own. And yet no one considers this unusual. Mentally, it's worse. Some mothers slip into silence. Others lash out. They weep uncontrollably, curse the child, or speak of shadows in the corner. Today, we call it postpartum depression. Back then, possession, weakness, punishment for sin. You're told to pray harder, told to be grateful, told to endure. But no one listens long enough to hear how badly you're slipping. If you're a noble woman, you may have servants. But you're still isolated, still expected to recover discreetly, behind curtained beds, in perfumed silence. If you're a peasant, you have no such barrier. Your body bleeds in public, your pain is witnessed, but not soothed. The midwife may check on you once, maybe twice. But after that, you're on your own. Women who recover quickly are praised. Those who don't, forgotten. There is no mother's group, no advice, no softness, just the world, still turning, still asking, what's for supper, while you try to remember how to walk without shaking. In the Middle Ages, recovery isn't about healing. It's about surviving long enough to be useful again. So the baby's here. The birth is behind you. You're bleeding less. Nursing, barely. Breathing, still. But don't exhale just yet. Because in the Middle Ages, the danger doesn't end with labor. It lingers. Waits. Wears a dozen faces. Fever, infection, starvation, madness. You're not safe. You're just in the second phase of risk. Puerperal fever. That's the invisible killer. You wouldn't know the term, but you'd know the signs. Hot skin, chills, a rising, pounding heat in your skull, red streaks on your thighs, a smell you don't talk about. Your body burns while the baby sleeps. You call for help, but by the time someone notices, it's too late. The fever climbs, your milk dries, you go delirious. And then silence. Why does it happen? The answer won't be discovered for centuries. Germs, bacteria, the unwashed hands of a midwife, dirty cloth pressed too tightly, a reused knife no one knows, but everyone suspects. Maybe it's punishment. Maybe it's witchcraft. Maybe it's just your bad luck. Infection isn't the only threat. Malnutrition dogs your heels. If your body was drained before birth, you'll find no mercy after. You need calories to recover, to nurse, to keep breathing. But food is scarce. If you're poor, you eat scraps. Broth, if someone makes it. Maybe bread, maybe milk if the cow hasn't died. Your body eats itself trying to repair. You shrink, you fade. And what of the mind? Madness is not uncommon. Some mothers lose themselves. Forget who they are. Refuse to hold the child. Speak to shadows. The term madwoman is used loosely but always with fear. Some are locked away. Others left to wander. Others drowned or blamed for witchcraft. In truth, it's trauma, sleep deprivation, blood loss, depression. But there's no diagnosis. Only whispers. Your baby might be fine, or might not. Infant illness is constant. Fevers, coughs, swelling, diarrhea. Most treatments involve prayers and poultices. If the child weakens, everyone blames something. You didn't swaddle tightly, you nursed at the wrong hour. You broke a taboo. Guilt becomes part of your recovery. A second weight tied to your broken body. There's also pressure. To return to normal, to clean, to serve, to smile. No one wants to hear about your pain. It makes them uncomfortable, makes them afraid. So you learn to hide it. You walk even when you shouldn't. You cook with shaking hands. You pick up the child and tell yourself the danger has passed. But it hasn't. Not really. In the Middle Ages, childbirth was just one hurdle. The days that followed were the real test, and survival meant not just living, but convincing everyone else that you were fine. In the Middle Ages, if the mother couldn't feed her baby, or simply refused, the baby's mouth found another breast. Wet nurses were common, especially among the wealthy. They were hired, borrowed, or begged for. They stepped in when maternal milk failed, or when noble customs demanded a mother's body remain unburdened by motherhood. A wet nurse might be a servant, or a relative, or a stranger from a neighboring village. She had only one qualification. Her milk flowed. It didn't matter if her own child had died. Grief was no excuse to waste what could be sold. Sometimes she nursed two babies, hers and yours. Sometimes hers had to be weaned early or buried to make room for the paying child. The arrangement was intimate but transactional. The wet nurse might live in your home, sleep beside your child, be closer to them than you ever are. She becomes their comfort, their warmth, their life source. And yet, she is never truly part of the family. She's paid in bread, coin, or cloth. She might be dismissed the moment the baby is weaned, or blamed if the child sickens. In noble households, using a wet nurse is expected. A lady of rank isn't meant to bear her breast. She is to recover her figure, maintain her fertility for future heirs, and remain socially unblemished. Nursing is seen as lowly, animalistic. That role is passed down. And so the lady sends her child into the arms of another woman and trusts that the bond she forfeits will one day be returned. It often isn't. There are fears about wet nurses. Superstitions, that they pass along more than milk, that their temperament seeps into the baby, that their sins, their poverty, their rage, their lust, all of it travels through the milk and reshapes the child. The church sometimes warns against choosing the wrong woman, and women whisper tales of changelings, of babies switched or corrupted by foul milk. But the need is too great. Fear does not outweigh hunger. Poor women might serve as wet nurses just to survive. Feeding a noble's child means security, food, shelter. for a few months, perhaps a year. Then they are sent away. If their own child lived, they reunite. If not, they carry that loss with them, quietly, beneath the praise or the suspicion. In rare cases, a bond forms. A wet nurse might love the child as her own, might be asked to stay on as a nursemaid, might be remembered years later. But most are not. Most vanish after their usefulness ends, milk gone, name forgotten. In the Middle Ages, milk was not just sustenance. It was politics, class, and survival, poured from one body into another, warm and necessary until it wasn't. 2 women, both pregnant, both carrying life inside them. But that's where the similarity ends. In the Middle Ages, your pregnancy is defined not just by biology, but by class. The peasant's pregnancy is a grind. The noblewoman's is a performance. The outcomes, equally uncertain. But the path there? Worlds apart. If you're a peasant, your pregnancy doesn't pause your life. It complicates it. You still rise before dawn, feed the animals, haul water, scrub laundry by hand, harvest crops, prepare meals, and sleep on straw beside the hearth. You work until the very last day. You give birth in your home, likely the same dirt-floored room where you cook, eat, and live. Privacy is a luxury. Pain is a given. Recovery is brief. Life continues whether your body is ready or not. Nutrition is sparse. You eat what you can: bread, porridge, onions, maybe eggs if the hens are generous. Your body pulls what it needs from your bones, your teeth, your blood. Illness is common. Miscarriage is whispered about but rarely mourned aloud. There is no doctor, just the midwife and the saints. But if you're noble, your pregnancy is both guarded and politicized. You're closely monitored, fed better, bathed more often, allowed, perhaps even required, to rest. You're removed from public life and cared for by a staff of attendants. You're expected to produce an heir, especially if you're married to power. And that expectation casts a shadow over every breath you take. You may have access to physicians, but even they are ruled by superstition. They prescribe purging, bloodletting, or fumigation, burning herbs near the womb. They inspect urine. They offer prayers and horoscopes. But when the time comes, it's still the midwife who takes control. A noble birth takes place in a carefully prepared chamber. Tapestries are drawn, windows shuttered. It becomes a cloistered world of women, silk and blood, gold and fear. The child, once born, is whisked away to be inspected. If it's a boy, celebrations ripple through the halls. If a girl, smiles may be thinner, quieter. Recovery is longer, but still lonely. A noblewoman may be confined for weeks, even months, away from her child and from court. Her body is hidden until it's deemed presentable again. She may not nurse, may not even choose the baby's name. Her role is to produce, survive, and repeat. So, yes, both women are pregnant. Both may cry out in labor. Both may die. But their pregnancies are shaped not just by biology, but by bread, bloodlines, and expectations. One is swallowed by the earth, the other cloaked in velvet. But both walk the same line, the line between life and death, barefoot or bejeweled. Pregnancy in the Middle Ages isn't just a physical state. It's a spiritual tightrope walk. Your body becomes a battleground of divine will, superstition, and suspicion. You're not just growing a baby. You're navigating a minefield of ancient beliefs and terrifying taboos, each one waiting to punish you for slipping up. Step 1. Don't crave the wrong food. People believe that cravings shape the child. If you hunger for wine, your baby might be a drunk. If you want meat, the child may grow savage. Heaven forbid you taste something impure. It might mark the child's body. A birthmark? That's not biology. That's divine retribution or maternal sin. etched into the skin for all to see. Step 2. Watch your thoughts. It's believed that a mother's emotions imprint on the baby. Sadness can breed weakness. Anger can deform. Lust, even in marriage, is dangerous during pregnancy. You're expected to be calm, clean, prayerful. If your child is born ill, they won't ask what herbs you took. They'll ask what evil thought you entertained in the second trimester. There are things you must avoid. Don't touch iron. Bad luck. Don't look at fire during a storm. It will make the child stutter. Don't walk under a new moon, or the baby will be born backward. Mirrors? Risky? Owls? Ominous? If a hair crosses your path, the child might be born with a split lip. These aren't old wives' tales, they're accepted truth. Then there are talismans. Some women wear amulets carved with symbols to ward off miscarriages. Others sew religious texts into their dresses. Saints are invoked daily. Saint Margaret for safe delivery, Saint Anne for fertility. Crosses are drawn on bellies. Knots are tied under beds. Prayers are whispered into smoke. Your womb becomes a holy battleground, guarded by ritual. Midwives often act as spiritual protectors too. They may chant over the belly, hang blessed herbs at doorways, or place charms near the birthing stool. Not all of it is sanctioned by the church, but most is tolerated, because fear overrides orthodoxy. When a woman's life hangs in the balance, no precaution is too strange. But the most dangerous superstition of all: blame. If the baby is stillborn or malformed or dies early, someone must be at fault. The mother didn't confess enough. She saw something wicked. She fought with her husband. She was cursed. No one says these things happen. They say, what did she do wrong? Pregnancy isn't just a physical ordeal. It's a moral exam, a spiritual quest, and a superstition-riddled journey through fear. Every step shadowed by the unknown. Every outcome judged. And in a world without science, myth is the only guide. It's the darkest chapter, the one no one wants to speak of, but everyone fears. Because sometimes a baby is born into a world that cannot or will not hold it. In the Middle Ages, abandonment and infanticide are not just crimes. They are desperate answers to impossible questions. For the poor, a new mouth to feed can be the difference between life and death for the rest of the family. There is no welfare, no food aid, no safety net. If the father has died or disappeared, the mother may face the future alone, penniless and ashamed. An illegitimate child carries not just social stain but legal penalties. The mother may be cast out, stoned, even executed. Sometimes, abandonment is the only perceived choice. Infants are left at monastery gates, church steps, or convent doors, quietly in the night with no note. Just cloth, maybe a ribbon, maybe a name whispered through tears. If the child is found by the right person, it may be taken in and raised. Many monasteries have foundling wheels, wooden devices that allow a woman to deposit a baby anonymously, avoiding both confrontation and punishment. But not all children are so lucky. Some are never found. Some are not meant to be. Infanticide is brutal, real, and feared. It is punishable by death, but that doesn't stop it. Newborns found drowned in rivers, buried in shallow graves, smothered in silence. The act is often cloaked in madness, desperation, or secrecy. Most do not speak of it. But midwives know, priests know. They've seen too many babies born dead under suspicious circumstances. The church condemns it outright. Infanticide is murder, a mortal sin, but the church also fuels the fear that drives it. A woman pregnant out of wedlock is damned. A child born in sin is shameful. A family might disown her. A community might stone her. And so, some women decide early and silently that the child must not live. Among the nobility, infanticide takes subtler forms. A sickly or deformed child might fail to thrive in the care of distant servants. An unwanted girl might be sent away and never seen again. No one questions. No one investigates. Money makes erasure easier. And yet, not all abandoned children are lost. Some are raised by the church, renamed, clothed in sackcloth, and made to serve. Some become monks. Some nuns. Some vanish into the peasant class. Their origins forgotten. Their mothers' stories untold. Infanticide is not about cruelty. It's about despair. A mother standing in the cold with an infant in her arms, knowing what the next hour holds, and choosing between two awful fates. That's not a crime, that's a tragedy. And it happened more often than history is willing to admit. The child is born, and something is not right. A twisted limb, a flattened skull, an extra finger, or worse, no sound, no movement, no focus in the eyes. In the Middle Ages, there is no diagnosis, no spectrum, no language for what we now call disability. There is only fear, judgment, and desperate interpretation. And what happens next depends entirely on who you are, what you believe, and who is watching. If you're poor, the stakes are brutal. A deformed child is a mouth without promise, a future without function. In a world where survival requires labor, a child who cannot walk, hear, or learn quickly becomes a burden. If the family is merciful and able, they will carry on. The child will be wrapped tighter, fed first, hidden when strangers come. But if resources are scarce, the options grow darker. Some are abandoned. Some are allowed to waste away. Others are quietly taken to the church where priests may care for them, or not. There's another layer. Suspicion. A malformed baby might be seen as punishment from God, evidence of sin, proof the mother was cursed or unfaithful or struck by witchcraft. Neighbors whisper. Families shrink. Some call the child a monster. Others believe it isn't human at all. Then come the stories of changelings, fairy folk who steal healthy babies and leave twisted ones in their place. If a child doesn't cry like the others, doesn't grow, doesn't respond, they might not be yours. Mothers are warned not to leave infants unattended or unblessed. Some fight the suspicion. Others, driven mad by fear, treat the child accordingly. There are stories of abuse, starvation, worse. If you're noble, things are more complex. A deformed heir threatens lineage and reputation. A child with a disability may be hidden away, sent to a distant cloister, or quietly declared dead. Some are raised in seclusion. Others are labeled holy fools, blessed with divine madness, kept alive as spiritual curiosities but never embraced as true kin. Occasionally, a disabled noble child is loved, fiercely protected. But that story is the rare one. The church's stance varies. Some clergy believe disability is a test from God. Others see it as the devil's mark. Miracles are prayed for. Cures attempted. Pilgrimages made. If the child shows any improvement, it is celebrated as divine intervention. If not, the child becomes invisible. A soul to pity, not nurture. There is no help, no tools, no schools, no future mapped out. A disabled child in the Middle Ages exists in the cracks of society, tolerated, feared, hidden, or cast out. And their fate rests not in medicine, but in the heart of whoever holds them next. Once the child is born, baptized and blessed, a new figure steps forward, neither parent nor priest, but something in between. The godparent. In the Middle Ages, godparents are not sentimental stand-ins for absent birthdays or casual family friends. They are spiritual anchors, social lifelines, and in some cases, salvation incarnate. Every baptized child is assigned at least one godparent, often two, one of each gender. These are not chosen lightly. A godparent is more than a symbolic sponsor. They are responsible for the child's soul. If the parents die, it's expected the godparents will guide the child's spiritual development and, in some cases, raise them outright. But their role isn't just practical. It's legal, social, sacred. To be asked to serve is an honor. To refuse? A slight. It creates bonds that override bloodlines. A poor man might name a local merchant hoping to lift his child into better favor. A noble might choose a bishop or knight to forge political ties. Godparenthood is a web of obligation and opportunity, chosen kinship that extends beyond the cradle. The Church keeps a close eye. Godparents must be baptized, preferably confirmed. They cannot be the biological parents. In fact, once someone becomes your godparent, they are spiritually forbidden from marrying you or your close kin. The tie is sacred, strong, and irreversible. On baptism day, the godparents stand before the font, hands raised. They speak for the baby, renounce the devil, recite the creed, pledge to uphold the faith. Sometimes they gift coins or linen, sometimes a small charm or relic, but their real gift is presence, the promise that someone else on this earth has a stake in your survival. For noble children, the selection of godparents is political chess. Royalty might be named, or powerful abbots, even if they never meet the child. Their name is enough. It cements alliances, favors, land deals. You are now the godchild of Duke so-and-so. That title opens doors the child may never walk through, but the association matters. But for peasants, the choice is often simpler. A trusted neighbor, a cousin, someone kind, someone who might still be around if things go badly. And often they do. If the child dies, the godparent mourns. If the child lives, they may remain close or drift away. But the bond remains. Your godparent is tied to your name, your baptism, your place in the world, and maybe, if fate is cruel, the one to carry your body to burial. In the Middle Ages, a godparent is a guardian of the soul, chosen not by chance, but by hope. The room is quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from absence. The crying has stopped. The breath has stopped. The baby is gone. In the Middle Ages, infant death is so common that it's almost expected. But that doesn't make it less devastating. It simply means the grief must be buried alongside the body. Sometimes the child dies within minutes. Blue, silent, never quite alive. Other times it lingers for days, weak, gasping, refusing to suckle, burning with fever. Maybe it's the cold, maybe the milk, maybe something unseen. The cause is rarely known. No one speaks of germs. They speak of fate, sin, punishment, or worse, witchcraft. If the baby was baptized, the ritual begins. A shroud is sewn, often from scraps. A candle is lit. The priest is called. The body is washed gently, carefully, almost reverently. If the parents can afford it, the baby is buried in consecrated ground, a small patch near the edge of the cemetery, sometimes unmarked, sometimes with a tiny wooden cross, carved in haste and soaked by rain. The Church says the soul is safe. Heaven has received it. That's meant to be comforting. It rarely is. If the baby was not baptized, everything changes. There is fear, deep, gnawing fear, that the soul is lost, suspended, denied heaven. The body may not be allowed into the churchyard. Some families bury their child in secret, beneath trees or beside rivers. Others plead with the priest to make an exception. A few midwives perform emergency baptisms during labor for this reason, just in case. The mother is often left alone with her grief. Her body still aches from birth. Her breasts still swell with milk. But there is no baby to feed. She leaks, she bleeds, she mourns in silence. No one tells her to take time. No one wraps her in comfort. Life moves on. Neighbors still need bread. Animals still need feeding. And if she cries too long, she risks suspicion. She must be strong, stoic, grateful for the will of God. The father may retreat into work or drink. He may show anger or nothing at all. Some weep. Others do not speak of it. The death of a baby is considered different. Less tragic, some say. Less real. But for the parents, especially the mother, it is everything. A name unspoken, a future erased. A body remembered in flashes, the curl of a fist, the shape of a mouth, the final breath. Stillbirths and infant deaths aren't recorded like adults. Many are forgotten in ledgers, in memory, in time, but not by the ones who held them, not by the ones who named them. The grave might be small, the ceremony short, but the wound is vast, hidden, permanent. In the Middle Ages, babies die often, but every time it feels like the end of the world to someone. The blood doesn't stop. The breath slows. Her eyes go distant, and then she's gone. It can happen in the middle of the birth, in a final scream that ends in silence, or hours later, with fever, swelling, and a slow slide into stillness. In the Middle Ages, the death of the mother is not a rare tragedy. It's a hauntingly frequent outcome. Maternal mortality is high. Infection, hemorrhage, retained placenta, eclampsia, unknown by name but recognized by symptom. She bleeds too much. She burns with fever. She seizes. She stops responding. The midwife tries what she can. Cold compresses. Prayers. Compressing the womb by hand. Nothing works. If she dies during the birth, her body is treated quickly. Washed, wrapped. If she was married and baptized, she is buried in the churchyard, ideally with a mass. Sometimes she is buried with the child, living or dead, depending on what follows. If the baby survives, it is handed to another woman. A wet nurse, a neighbor. Someone who steps forward, often without ceremony. The household falls into disorder. The husband is stunned. The children, if there are others, are suddenly half orphaned. And the newborn, swaddled and silent, knows only the scent of someone else. The room where the mother died may be scrubbed quickly, as if to erase the horror, but it doesn't work. The absence lingers. Grief has no outlet. There are no grief counselors, no support networks. The church offers comfort, but also doctrine. It was her time. It was God's will. Perhaps she had unconfessed sins. Perhaps she was taken to remind the living of their own mortality. None of it helps. If the mother was unmarried, her death is handled with less sympathy. Some whisper it was justice. Others refuse her a proper burial. If her child lives, it carries the weight of her reputation. If it dies, both vanish into silence. In some cases, the husband remarries quickly. The baby needs a mother. The house needs a woman. Grief is replaced by duty. Survival trumps mourning. Love is not always a factor. Many second wives raise children not their own. Some with love, some with resentment. And the baby, it grows up with stories, or silence. Maybe a locket, maybe a name, or maybe nothing at all. In the Middle Ages, a mother's death in childbirth is not news. It's a risk every woman knows. She enters labor with a candle burning beside her, not just for light but for her soul, in case she doesn't leave the room alive. In the chaos, in the sweat, in the blood, there is one figure who stands between life and death: the midwife. She is not just a helper. She is the cornerstone of childbirth in the Middle Ages. In a world without doctors for women, without science, without mercy from nature, the midwife is a lifeline. Her hands may be rough. Her methods may be old. But she knows things no man does, and in the hour of labor she is queen. Most midwives are older women, experienced, practical, revered or feared depending on how many babies they've caught or lost. They aren't trained in books. They learn by doing, from their mothers, from watching, from holding. They've seen it all: breech births, stillbirths, hemorrhages, twins, deformities. And they carry this knowledge like Holy Scripture, written not in Latin but in scars, calluses, and instinct. She arrives when the pains start, sometimes summoned by a child running barefoot in the dark. She brings her tools, clean cloths, herbs, oils, a birthing stool, prayers. She may be greeted with hope or panic. But once inside, she takes command. The room becomes hers. She tells the other women what to do. She manages the temperature, the lighting, the pacing of breath and scream. The midwife is also a guardian of secrets. She knows who is truly the father, who was married in haste, which families are cursed. She sees the truth of women's bodies, bruises, infections, sadness, and she keeps silent, most of the time. Her reputation depends on it. She also performs emergency baptisms. If the baby is dying before a priest can be fetched, it is the midwife who acts. She mutters the sacred words, sprinkles water, and commits the tiny soul to heaven. In that moment, she holds eternity in her hands, and no one questions her authority. But her position is not secure. The church tolerates her, but watches closely. If too many babies die, she may be accused of negligence, or worse, witchcraft. If she uses charms or chants considered unholy, suspicion blooms. And if she is outspoken, unmarried, or too skilled, she risks everything. Power in a woman is never safe. Still, she is needed, always. When a woman screams through the night, it is the midwife who stays awake. When a husband paces in fear, it is the midwife who lies and says, "It will be all right." And when a new life enters the world, it is the midwife who first says the name, wipes the blood, and hands the child over. She is a healer, a witness, a quiet miracle. In a world that gives women little, she takes up space with courage, and leaves with stories etched into her soul. While the screams echo through the house and women bend over boiling water and bloodied linen, the men wait, pacing, praying, drinking, or doing anything at all except entering the room. In the Middle Ages, childbirth is a woman's world. Men are barred, sometimes literally, always culturally. Their job is to provide, protect, and pray, but not to witness. A husband might wait in the next room, heart pounding. He hears the cries, the tearing, the silence that follows, and he doesn't ask. If he's wealthy, he may be updated by a servant. If he's poor, he waits until the door opens and someone tells him if he's now a father or a widower. Some men stay outside entirely. They busy themselves in the barn, or leave altogether. Others sit in taverns, numbing their fear. And when the child is born, they may return drunk, hopeful, or furious, depending on the outcome. For noblemen, childbirth is a matter of inheritance. A son means security, a daughter means delay, a stillbirth means uncertainty. The midwife might carry the news to the man first, especially if the outcome is bad. And if the wife dies, the man must make arrangements, quickly. For poor men, the stakes are still high, but the emotions are buried. They may build the coffin, dig the grave, fetch the priest. Their grief must be quiet, their fear swallowed. To show too much is weakness. To ask too many questions is seen as foolishness. But men are not emotionless. They are just cut off from the process, from the pain, from the connection. Some feel relief when the child lives. Others feel distance, especially if they weren't there to see it take its first breath. And if the child dies, many simply go back to work, not because they don't care, but because there's nothing else to do. There are exceptions. Some fathers insist on holding their newborns. Some grieve openly. Some remain in the shadows of the room, breaking tradition. But mostly, they are observers of a private storm, waiting for the wind to stop and the doors to open. In a world where men hold nearly all the power, childbirth is the one moment where they are shut out. And that exclusion shapes how they love, how they grieve, and how they remember. Pregnancy is expected if you're a wife. It's celebrated if you're a noble. But if you're a nun, it's a scandal, a crisis, and possibly your death sentence. In the Middle Ages, religious life is supposed to be sacred, removed from the carnal, protected by vows. But the human body doesn't always obey Scripture, and sometimes, behind monastery walls, women grow round with the very thing they were sworn to avoid: life. When a nun became pregnant, the consequences varied, from quiet cover-up to brutal punishment. The assumption was clear: sin had occurred. She must have broken her vow of chastity. The question was how. Did she seduce someone? Was she coerced? Was it rape? The answer often didn't matter. The presence of a child was proof enough of guilt. Some women were victims, abused by priests, monks, even nobles who saw their status as immunity. Others fell in love, broke rules, and paid the price. A few fled before the belly began to show. But most stayed, hoping the veil of the cloister would protect them from discovery. It rarely did. Once noticed, the options narrowed. In some abbeys, the pregnancy was hidden. Other nuns helped deliver the child in secret, then abandoned it at the church gate. The mother might be confined, exiled, or forced to repent publicly. Her status as a bride of Christ was considered annulled, not by divine will, but by biology. In extreme cases, the punishment was execution. Some were walled alive. Others were hanged. The church sought to preserve sanctity, and a pregnant nun was viewed as a breach in the fortress of holiness. Compassion was rare, yet not all stories end in death. Some orders, especially in later centuries, began to recognize the reality of human failure. A nun might be sent to a remote house of penance. Her child might be raised by the church. The sin forgiven, but not forgotten. There are also tales of divine pregnancies. Visions, miracles, births claimed to be the result of holy intervention. These were rarely believed by authorities, but sometimes whispered among the faithful. A virgin birth was always suspect, but never entirely ruled out. After all, one had already happened, hadn't it? Behind convent walls, life was meant to be still. Prayer, silence, service. But sometimes life defied the rules. Sometimes a belly swelled beneath the habit. And when it did, the woman inside was no longer a sister. She was a sinner, a scandal, a symbol of what happens when flesh refuses to stay hidden. Not all babies in the Middle Ages are born into shame or struggle. Some are born into expectation, destiny, danger. When the child is an heir, especially to land, title, or throne, the stakes are immediately raised. That newborn is no longer just a child. He is a symbol, a weapon, a future. From the moment the midwife announces it's a boy, a ripple of consequence spreads. For noble families, especially the ruling elite, everything depends on producing a male heir. It's not about sentiment, it's about continuity. Land passes to sons. Titles pass to sons. Power is preserved through male bloodlines. If the child is a boy, celebrations erupt. Bells ring, feasts are declared, gifts are sent from other lords. The mother is praised, her body now seen as a vessel of providence. If it's her first son, she may be elevated in rank. If it's her third daughter, she may be pitied, or worse, blamed. The baby is wrapped in the finest cloth, baptized with silver and incense. Names are chosen with strategic precision, often after grandfathers, kings, saints, or martyrs. A noble baby may be swaddled in gold-threaded blankets while the castle steward records his birth in an illuminated ledger. But he is not raised by his parents. Wet nurses care for him. Tutors await. Heirship requires preparation. If the family is royal, the pressure multiplies. A boy born to a king becomes the future king. But his infancy is precarious. Many die young, leaving power vacuums and bloody disputes. So from the start, this child is protected, watched, sometimes hidden. Poison is a fear. So are rival claims. A sickly heir may be replaced quietly by a healthier sibling, rare, but not impossible in cutthroat courts. And if the heir is not a boy, the disappointment can be suffocating. A girl might still be declared heir if there are no brothers, but she will be married off, her claim dependent on her husband's loyalty. She is not her own. Even a strong-willed girl must fight for legitimacy. Some heirs are celebrated their entire lives. Others die in their cradles, mourned not just for their sweetness, but for their symbolic value. Their tombs are etched with crests, not lullabies. Their deaths rewrite succession plans and spark wars. Being born as an heir means being born into expectation and exile. Your cries echo through stone halls where everyone watches and waits for what you will become. A child is born, and suddenly, the future is rewritten. In the Middle Ages, pregnancy was never just about life. It was about lineage, bloodlines, names carved into stone. Land passed from generation to generation. One birth could preserve a legacy or end it. Among the nobility, a healthy birth secured political alliances, confirmed inheritances, and settled disputes. It meant the family name would survive another generation. Castles, titles, and territories had heirs. Peace followed, sometimes. A male heir meant stability, a daughter, leverage. Her body would become a bargaining chip in marriages that sealed treaties or trade routes. Every child, noble or not, was born with expectation laid upon its shoulders like an invisible crown. Even in peasant families, children were legacy. Sons to till the land. Daughters to help raise siblings and marry into stronger households. Your lineage was your wealth, measured not in coins but in bodies. A family with many children could survive longer winters. A mother who birthed a dozen might be honored, or simply exhausted. But each child carried the weight of generational hope. Legitimacy was everything. A child born out of wedlock, even if noble, was often excluded from inheritance. Bastards could be acknowledged, favored, even loved, but rarely named heirs unless no others remained. This exclusion built bitter rivalries and civil wars. Monarchs bent laws to secure succession. Others ignored their own sons to preserve bloodlines untainted by scandal. Some births saved dynasties, others destroyed them. The wrong child, born at the wrong time to the wrong woman, could unravel everything. A queen who failed to conceive, a duchess who bore daughters only. These were not private tragedies, they were political catastrophes. Women were praised not for their character but for their fertility. And yet, for all this calculation, love did find its way in. Some parents loved fiercely, in spite of status, fathers who raised their daughters like sons, mothers who protected illegitimate babies from the wrath of legitimacy, children who grew up knowing they were born with expectations and still managed to become something else entirely. In the end, birth was both beginning and burden. It determined status, gender roles, future labor, social worth. It bound the past to the future through one tiny scream. And in a world defined by blood, both spilled and inherited, that scream echoed far beyond the walls where it was first heard. The child is born. The mother, alive if fortune is kind. The blood has dried. The midwife has gone. The cradle rocks slowly in the corner. Life begins again. But nothing is the same. For 9 months, everything changed. Every decision, every fear, every breath revolved around this unseen life. Now it's here. And though the danger hasn't passed, a strange quiet settles over the home. It's not peace, it's weight, the weight of survival, of knowing how close death came, and how thin the line remains. In noble halls, a nurse takes the baby. A scribe documents the event. Gossip runs ahead of reality. In peasant homes, the mother rocks on a stool by the hearth, humming softly, eyes ringed with fatigue. Somewhere else, a grave is filled. A candle burns out, and the world turns, as it always does. But one thing never changes. The ritual. The way women gather. The way they pass knowledge hand to hand, womb to womb. Midwives teach daughters. Mothers whisper to nieces. A sister helps her brother's wife tighten the cloth around her belly. The tools change. The stakes evolve. But the sisterhood of birth endures. In the Middle Ages, pregnancy is not just personal. It's community, it's inheritance, it's survival. Every woman knows someone who didn't make it. Every birth is a prayer answered or denied. Every mother is changed forever, whether the child lives or not. And every story told is a way of holding on. Even now, centuries later, echoes remain. In lullabies, in warnings, in the strange habits passed down without explanation. We carry the weight of those medieval mothers in our language, our rituals, our fears. The fear of pain, the hope of life, the awe of birth. The circle doesn't close because the story ends. It closes because another one is about to begin. Somewhere, another woman feels the first stir in her belly. Somewhere, another midwife gathers her herbs. Somewhere, another cry will pierce the night. And just like that, the cycle of hope and fear begins again.